Ja, vi ska gå vidare i vårt program. Nu ska vi prata råvaror. Vi har Arctic Minerals med oss och deras Executive Director Peter Georg. Hej Peter!
Hello, hello!
Ja, kör igång så kommer jag tillbaka med lite frågor.
Thanks very much. Thank you to everybody for joining. We've got apologies if I don't take this in Swedish. I can speak Swedish, but my preference talking in technical mining language is always in English. But we'll go from there. And first time for quite some time for Arctic Minerals. Arctic Minerals itself has been around for a number of years, but we did a restructure and a refinance in October of last year, and I joined the board after merging my private company together with Arctic Minerals to then change the focus of the company from the Bidjevagge project in Norway to now our main project being the Hennes Bay project in Dalsland in Sweden. Just a bit of information there, which I'd ask you to read in your own time. But I guess as far as the Arctic Minerals story is concerned, as mentioned, it's been around for some time with Peter Walker and Christer Söderman. Very long experience with Aktiedagarna and of course important with regards to the Kevitsa project in having sold that through to First Quantum and now owned by Boliden. I also have a very, very strong current board with me today, being Robert Behetz as non-executive chairman, myself as executive director, and Risto in there as CEO, but with also a very, very experienced advisory committee with a few faces in there that some in the industry might know, i.e. Lars-Erik Aro, ex-senior executive with Boliden and of course a former managing director of LKAB. And Erik Lundström there, of course, being my chief geologist, who also a partner in the private company that we merged together with Arctic Minerals. But now, like I said, very first-class team, very strong commodities outlook going forward. I think as far as Sweden is concerned and the Nordics as a whole, it's fair to say that we're now a force in the Nordic exploration and development side of things. We now have projects within Sweden, 2 projects within Sweden, 2 projects within Finland, and of course the Norwegian project in Bidjevagge. We have a focus on the critical metals and the copper space, which and also a very strong focus on the silver and the gold. And I think that as far as our changes that we've made within the organisation and bringing on a new major project at Hennes Bay, we've timed it beautifully with regards to a new super cycle emerging for copper and precious metals and other critical metals. But I guess just a little bit about my belief in copper. I mean, I'm a mining engineer by profession. I spent 5-6 years working for Boliden and companies such as BHP, Western Mining Corporation around the world, as so have a number of my other board members, but I'm also a mineral economist. I'm a very firm believer that the market or the industry has reached peak copper, and that's an interesting scenario to have. And when you consider that basically we need copper for just about everything besides what we eat, but I think we even need the copper to heat up the food that we eat in some respects. And we have the issue of there are older mines that are now in decline. Realistically, we need to be producing or finding a massive new copper deposit every year to keep up with the demands that are required for the industry going forward. But there hasn't really been any new major discoveries in the last 10 to 15 years. Then, of course, you throw on top of that the green industrial revolution with the requirements for the electrification of everything, and which includes solar panels and electric vehicles and wind farms. And that requirement for the amount of copper in there just completely blows the industry away. So creates a very interesting scenario for us copper bulls, and but also a perfect opportunity for companies such as us that have in that particular market and have just recently put out a significant resource. But I guess a little bit more closer to home with regards to copper in the EU. Look, I don't think it's any secret that the EU and Sweden and the Nordics have not been as bullish towards mining and the mining industry over the last 50 years as perhaps the rest of the world, and have let opportunities slip. But I think that now that the world understands exactly what's going on with regards to how much power that China is putting onto the rest of the world's supply chains with regards to metals and materials, obviously the issues that we're now facing because of loss of supply from Russia after the invasion of Ukraine, and then the tariffs that the USA is now putting onto countries all over the world, really means that there has to be a change in focus with regards to EU and Sweden and the Nordics becoming a lot more self-sufficient. And I think you'll see that in a lot of the discussions happening at a political level and in the newspapers with regards to really needing to bring home mines and increase the amount of expenditure and exploration and getting the permitting process sped up, I guess. And if you have a quick look at this particular slide here, I think it sums up the whole industry. You know, we're currently importing around about 50% of our copper concentrates into the EU today from outside of the EU, such as from companies from Chile and Peru, you know, over 12,000 kilometres away. And really a lot of that all in the name of environmental protection. You know, we have the ability to build our own mines and develop our own mines here, but we've chosen not to. And when you consider that the copper concentrates is between 20 and 30% metal content, and the rest is waste. And we're bringing that in from 12,000 kilometres away, all of that waste, and having to deal with that within country. I don't really understand that. But, you know, I guess that does go a long way towards explaining the situation that the EU is currently in. Talking about our projects, as mentioned, 5 projects within the Nordics now. So we're now a serious player within the Nordics. We have, of course, the Bidjovaggi project. We have in Norway, the Swan Lake project up in Boden in northern Sweden. We have our 2 greenfields projects over there in Finland. But our main project being the Hennes Bay project, which is what I really want to talk to you mostly about today. So in March of this year, we released our maiden resource down in Dalsland. So 55 million tonne starter resource, we're calling it. And I'm calling it a starter resource mostly because we have 402 square kilometres of project tenement, if you like, down there in Dalsland. And we've drilled less than 5% of that particular area. 14,000 metres of historical drilling drilled out by the Swedish state back in the 70s and 80s. But you know, we've got outcropping copper and silver at surface with the Dingelvik deposit. Again, like I said, 55 million tonnes at around about that 1% copper equivalent. But also it's outcropping over 17, 18 kilometres away where we have over 1.7% copper and 40 grams per silver at surface. So we know that this has got the potential to be an awful lot bigger. I'll just hop over that one. So a couple of weeks ago, we released our underground mining conceptual study. This was an important thing for us to be able to demonstrate to the market that this project that, well, I guess, concentrating purely on Dingelvik at the moment, but then there's also the other deposits in and around it which havenent been converted over to JORC compliance yet. But we focused in on the Dingelvik project with regards to its mineability, and we utilised a independent mining consultant, Deswick, out of Australia, that have demonstrated to us and to the market that we have at least a 3 to 5 million tonne per annum project purely from the Dingelvik part of the ore body here at around about that 1% copper equivalent for at least a decade. But you know, it's we believe there's going to be a multi-decade project with a room and pillar style mining operation, very similar to what we see down there in the copper schiffer, down there in Poland and Germany, which I had the good fortune of visiting only about 3 weeks ago, and the similarities in the geology and the style of mining and equipment that we would be using here would be very similar. Very blessed where we're located down in Dalsland. It's obviously not a very industrialised part of Sweden, but from my point of view, I've got some fantastic infrastructure there. I have 2 railway lines already over the top of the tenement. I've got 2 440 kV or 400 kV electrical transmission lines running over the top. There's fresh water. I'm only 1 hour away from Gothenburg with the fast train. So obviously 800,000 people plus of potential employees that we can bring in there to help the locals to mine this particular thing. Fantastic access to cheap power compared to the rest of the world, and obviously the fresh water. So our forward work plan from here. Look, Sweden, it's a tier 1 mining jurisdiction of the world. A lot like Australia and Canada. There is a huge requirement from a permitting and a stakeholder engagement perspective. So we're putting an awful lot of focus into that, and having spent a lot of time talking to politicians and getting to know the various politicians both at a federal level and at a commune level, and starting conversations with local stakeholders. We've started our projects for doing the environmental, heritage and cultural investigation baselines for Hennes Bay. We have just completed a MMT survey, which is a state-of-the-art latest technology in geophysics, where we've flown over the top with a helicopter and really trying to get a good look down to even about as much as 1,000 metres below the surface, to get an idea as to what this potential expansion to that 55 million tonne starter resource could look like. We've just submitted a number of drilling permits through to Bertie Stolten or the Mines Department to hopefully get in and start drilling towards the end of the year or beginning of next year, depending on how long the permits will take. And then, of course, once we get the information back from our geophysical programs, then we hope that that's going to add even further potential drilling locations for us as we go forward. From the project development side, like I said, we've just completed our underground mining conceptual study and scheduling. The preliminary metallurgical testing that will start once we've built up a bit of a log of our drilling core, and that will then, all of that information will then start rolling into preliminary mining study and economic assessment, which we hope to get into well and truly into next year. So I like this diagram here because it really demonstrates to experienced mining and exploration investors, but also to more generalist investors as to where we're at. So each one of these dotted lines that you can see here is really a milestone and a point at where we get revalued as a company once we achieve one of these particular milestones. So we had a significant revaluation when we released our maiden JORC resource in March. And I expect that those sorts of revaluations will continue as we go forward. We've got a very strong plan over the next 5-6 years for potentially taking us through to construction ready, which means that we're going to be extremely busy as we move the Hennes Bay project up through the different levels, through the inferred resource, measured and indicated resource, and also our studies through to feasibility study, as well as our permitting, including our mining permitting or our bearbetningstillstånd, and then of course leading through to our environmental permit or our miljötillstånd. A little bit on our capital structure. So we did as I mentioned, we restructured when we took over the company in October of last year. We also did a 10-for-1 reverse split from 400 million shares down to the 40 million shares. We've done a couple of capital raises. We did one for about 12 million krona in October of last year. We recently successfully completed another one in June of this year for about 17.5 million krona. And as of the end of July, I think we had around about 17 million krona in the bank. Top 20 shareholders control around about 70% of the company. So it is a very tightly held stock, which from my point of view is very good. And we also have some very strong support from institutional and sophisticated investors going forward. So just to finish off, I think from my point of view, if you're looking for mining or exploration investment opportunities, look, we're in exactly the right space. We're in the copper, we're in the critical metal space. I mean, I haven't even spoken about the potential for the gallium, germanium, vanadium, and the rare earth elements that we have down there at Hannes Bay. I haven't gone into too much of and of course our Swan Lake project, which sits smack bang in between the Aitik project and the Lava project, two of Bolaget's big project, porphyry projects up in the north of Sweden. The geology is correct. We have the sediment-hosted copper at Hannes Bay, exactly the same as what they have at the KGHM down in the copper schiffer. We have the porphyry copper gold systems like what we have up in northern Sweden. The team that we have is fantastic, very experienced, multidisciplinary team from the geology, the mining, and as well as the guys that have taken small companies such as Arctic all the way through from a 200 million krona market capitalization through to multi-billion krona valuations and engineered sales of actually the companies into bigger projects or even taking the projects into production themselves. We have a very strong pipeline, an awful lot of news and news flow to go through and a lot of work that we need to do over the next 5-6 years to take Hannes Bay through to production. But that's not to mention that the other projects that we have that could potentially are only 1 or 2 drill holes away from a major discovery in their own right. Position for the Nordic markets, look, Sweden, Norway and Finland. I mean, I've been operating in Sweden and the Nordics for the last, off and on for the last 30 years. I've never seen things as bullish for building the Swedish mining industry and the Nordic mining industry back up to where it belongs as the #1 miner and explorer in the Nordics and in the EU. We have very strong Swedish and Finnish management within the team, and of course we're listed on the Stockholm exchange. So I think that's about my time. So I guess if there's any questions, I'm happy to hand over.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. I'll start off with Hänneviken, as we say in Swedish, your project in Dalsland. Just to understand, when do you think you can have your mining operations up and running if everything goes smoothly, so to say?
Well, look, if everything goes to plan, it's not unreasonable for us to be construction ready in 5 to 6 years. And I think that the most logical place to demonstrate that is just to have a look at some of our peers. I mean, the Viscaria Group bolaget have just gone through exactly the same process. I think in the last 6 years they've grown from a 200 million krona organisation to a 2 billion krona organisation and received all of their permits and done all their feasibility studies and drilled 205,000 metres. So and they began that in a period of time where I think it was debatable as to whether or not Europe was wanting to have mining projects within the country. But I think that's completely switched now in the last 3 years, 2 to 3 years. So it could even potentially be faster than that 5 to 6 year period. But again, that comes down to permitting and money. Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Another question. I didn't understand that. Will it be an open pit mine or are you planning to go underground? Because it sounded on your presentation like it was an open pit mine, and then you showed the presentation of you're going.
No, it's definitely an underground mine. So it does outcrop at surface, which gives me a massive advantage because we'll effectively be putting our declines straight from the surface down in ore into the underground. But I think this suits a high volume, high speed room and pillar style operation like what they have down in the copper schiefer down in Poland. So, for the most part, people won't even know that we're down there.
Yeah. When it comes to permit, you say that the political risk has gone down, and you don't have reindeers in Dalsland, right? So you don't have
Correct.
that political risk. What about the environment around in Dalsland? Do you see anything? I guess Länsstyrelsen will have something to say about this mining project.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's the same in every tier 1 country in the world. The environmental requirements and permitting requirements are the highest in places like Sweden, Australia, Canada, and there's a very good reason for that, and that's because there is a very strong desire to protect the environment and to do the right thing. So I'm not concerned about the amount of work that we need to do from a permitting perspective. It's just a process that we need to go through, and we are very much prepared to do things to a very high level of technical capability, and we've done it before.
Yeah, okay. And I always say, I think one of your sort of peers, Botnia Exploration, they say that it was easier to work if you go underground compared to an open pit when it comes to the environment. Are you of the same opinion, so to say?
Well, look, I mean, I guess the short answer is yes, and that's one of the strategic decisions that we've got. Because, I mean, you could potentially put small open pits down here in Hannah's Bay, but I think for the sake of protecting the environment, we'll make the decision to do the whole thing from an underground perspective. It does. I'm an environmentalist myself. I seriously don't like to hurt the plants or the animals. I'm a different generation of miner that's grown up. I'm in my early 50s now, but I've seen the examples of poor mining practices around the world and how we can do things better. And I think, to be fair, countries like Sweden, we're leading the way. Companies such as Boliden and LKB and even Viscaria that are coming through now with some of the technologies that they're bringing in for their treatment of their water. These are state of the art.
Okay. That have to be the final words because we have to move forward. Thank you much, Peter, for your presentation.
No problem. Thank you very much for the time.